Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In a previous video, I talked about my two main criteria when I was looking for an EV back in January of 2022. And those were availability and being able to buy at MSRP. And without really knowing the actual market conditions at the time, I set my sights on the Volvo XC40 Recharge, and within just a couple phone calls I realized that there was no dealer inventory, none coming anytime soon, and I couldn't even place a future order yet. So that left me with either open online order options like the ID4 and the MachE, or in-stock options like the Polestar 2 or Ioniq 5. So today's video is about why I chose the Ioniq 5 among all the other EVs in the market. So 3 quick notes before we jump in. Number 1, Teslas were not an option for me because I wanted the federal tax credit, which you currently cannot get if you buy a new Tesla. Number 2, the Kia EV6 I didn't think was available locally, and I also actually preferred the exterior and the interior of the Ioniq 5, so I figured if I had a choice, I would go with the Ioniq 5 over the EV6. And number 3 was, of all the cars that I'm going to discuss, the only two that I test drove were the Polestar 2 and the Ioniq 5. So that means that a lot of my decisions were based off of specs, reading or watching car reviews, and then reading information on owners' forums. So first off, let's touch upon the budget. For me, that meant staying under 60,000, preferably closer to 50,000. And for the ID4, that meant the all-wheel drive gradient. For the MachE, that meant the premium all-wheel drive extended range. For the Polestar 2, that meant the all-wheel drive long range. And for the Ioniq 5, that meant the limited all-wheel drive. The next thing I looked at was the acceleration times. So previously I had driven a Tesla Model 3, which was the standard range plus trim. I'd had it for about a week, and based on what I could find, it looked like 0 to 60 times were about 5.3 seconds. So that was my baseline of what I wanted. I didn't really want anything slower than that, just personal preference. Now the MachE GT was over budget, so that wasn't in consideration. The MachE all-wheel drive extended range, specs, and reviews seemed like it would match what I was looking for, but I was seeing some owner comments and Bjorn Island's testing showing 0 to 60 times actually closer to the mid to 5 high second range, so that made me a little hesitant. The Polestar 2 seemed to limit power off the line and then release it all maybe around 30 miles per hour, so that didn't really fit my style since I preferred more power off the line for city driving. And lastly, the ID4 just didn't sound like it would be quick enough based on the reviews and the published 0 to 60 times. But the Ioniq 5 pretty much across the board was getting positive 0 to 60 marks, consistently beating Hyundai's times. So that put a strike behind the ID4, a question mark behind the MachE and the Polestar 2, and a check mark behind the Ioniq 5. The next category I considered was availability. Now the ID4 and the MachE were going to be a few months wait, but the Polestar 2 was readily available and the Ioniq 5 had just released, and at the time I thought I had a decent chance at finding one. I actually didn't realize how lucky I would have to be to get one. But that puts a strike behind the ID4 and the MachE, and check marks behind the Ioniq 5 and Polestar 2. So at this point I had decided to remove the ID4 from consideration. The next category I looked at was the tech features. I honestly wasn't that interested in Ford's Blue Cruise since I just wouldn't be using this car for road trips really. I preferred better lane centering tech, better driver's assistant features, and just overall better tech. My 2016 Volvo XC90 gave me a pretty good idea of the tech in the Polestar 2, but I was still intrigued by the Android-based infotainment system. For the Ioniq 5, I was very interested in general just about the overall tech because of all the reviews and raves I'd heard for the Hyundai Kia Genesis line. So that put a strike behind the MachE and check marks behind the Polestar 2 and the Ioniq 5. And at this point, I had decided to remove the MachE from consideration. And the last category that I looked at was the exterior and the interior. Now, the Ioniq 5 exterior was definitely my favorite. The Polestar 2 and the MachE had kind of tied for second, and the ID4 came in last year, but I still felt it was a pretty good looking car. As far as the interior went, the Ioniq 5's interior is really what pushed it to the win. They managed to make the common touch points and the switchgear all look and feel premium, even though there's still a lot of plastic inside. The Polestar 2 definitely feels a little more premium from a material standpoint, but having had an inscription Volvo XC90 means that I'm able to notice where they use plastics and the less premium materials compared to my car. So here's a few sample photos showing what the materials look like in my XC90. Nice wood inlays, some metal usage, and once you've seen that, going to the Polestar 2 feels like all I'm seeing is plastics. So, at least personally, the Polestar 2 also felt a little cramped and a little dark compared to the Ioniq 5. So that, for me, put a strike behind the Polestar 2 and gave the Ioniq 5 the clean sweep across the board. Now, I do wish that I had gotten the chance to actually test drive the MachE and the ID4 before making my decision. I recently got the chance to sit in a MachE about 2 weeks ago, and I was actually really surprised by the interior and the cabin materials. They actually all look really nice. I think the MachE, the ID4, and the Polestar 2, even the EV6, they're all fantastic choices, and I don't think there's a bad choice among them. But at the end of the day, I'm very happy with my purchase of the Ioniq 5, and I firmly believe that it was the right choice for me. So there you have it. That's my rundown of why I chose the Ioniq 5. Let me know which one you prefer and why in the comments below.